Josh and Brian here with the Leonhardt team at Coldwell Banker Realty, and it is the beginning part of February, and the market is heating up.
Yeah, it is. I think we're seeing that spring influx of buyers really trying to get out there. We've had a couple of situations where we had one this past week where there was 27 offers on the property. And just recently this past weekend, I had one that was a multiple offer situation where we had to go nearly 5% over on list price, right? Had to pull out all the bells and whistles to be able to get it under contract. And I think that conversation for sellers, or how this is important, I think, is knowing that this time frame between February and March is actually one of the better time frames for sellers rather than getting into May and June.
Because inventory is so low at this point, snowbirds are still south. There's buyers that are coming out. The election's over. We're kind of it's been a warm winter, fairly mild winter, so people are still out there looking. The realization that interest rates may not change a whole lot, or we're just comfortable where they're at and we'll refi later. There's a lot of things that buyers are getting out there and being active right now, which is great.
Yeah, but I think it's something to note for buyers right now, or even, specifically for sellers, is so last year, the most showings per listing actually happened in the months of February and March. Kind of that thought is like you will actually get more traffic this time of year because there's less competition. I have a story from last year where I had somebody that went on in the early part of January at way too high of a price and didn't actually adjust their price into a realm that made sense until they got to that June time period. And as soon as that time period came around, there was 4 other competitive properties with them where had they just chosen the right price at the right time, it probably would have sold in multiple offers. So I think knowing that timing, sellers have this extra time right now to be able to get the most, I think, out of the market in reality is in these February and March months. And I think on the buyer's side, what's your advice to buyers right now?
And come in. We're starting to see, again, the multiple offers, the competition. So it's, making sure your financing's done, making sure you understand what you're comfortable with and where you're going. And there's not a lot of inventory out there right now. So it is going to be a little competitive at this point for a buyer. And I've had a couple listings here this past 30 days where the sellers were more concerned with time. One had purchased a house already and they were comfortable holding 2 mortgages, but didn't want to hold 2 for a long time. So they decided, our market value was a point, and they said, we're comfortable going lower to try to get this sold quicker. In doing that, they got more than I think we would have gotten had we started at the market price that I had originally suggested. So they were super excited, got a quick close. Got best of both worlds, essentially. Just the inventory had shrunk so much, and they timed it right. It was right before Christmas when we listed that one, and they closed by the end of January, and I got one right now. The sellers are, yes, we want to get the most we can, but also we really need this to sell within the next 30 days. And so we've put a lower price than I originally suggested, and we're already in multiple offers on it.
Yeah, and I think for buyers to understand of what this market is like, how to understand it, it takes a little bit of time for a buyer to really start to realize what they kind of may have to do. It'll take a little bit. So I think the earlier you start as a buyer to be able to go, hey, this might take a longer time than it has in the past, of being able to find that property and get accepted on it. So you may have a couple of times where you lose some and don't get discouraged, I think, for a buyer. It's like, this happens, this is kind of the way that it works. But I think just getting out there and getting started, getting a good understanding of what's in your price range, how do you be competitive and putting yourself in the best position possible to get a home.
Right. This isn't like last fall where we had multiple homes at that price range. As I said, that one in June where all of a sudden there's 5 or 6 you kind of can choose from. And it wasn't quite as competitive in the fall. And now, as I said, inventory has dropped by 75% because a lot of people take their homes off in the wintertime. And now we're starting to see that inventory come up a little bit, but it's still really low. And as the inventory grows, it's going to help buyers out. But stay at it. It does take time, and understand and make sure you're doing the right things with your agent and communicate how do I get the best deal possible, or how do I get a house under contract?
Yeah. So I think when it comes to deciding what timing makes the most sense for a seller, that there's 1,000 different things that play into that, but knowing that this time is a good time for sellers, right? And I think it also, when it comes to a buyer's having that conversation early up front to go, what am I getting myself into, right? When it comes to how do I get an offer accepted, or what am I going to get? And starting those conversations early, even though maybe the ideal timeline is later on down the road. So I think having that conversation, asking those questions, and we're here obviously to answer any of those questions for you guys. So if you do have any, just message us or send us an email, give us a phone call. We're here and happy to help.